To Afghanistan now, where green-on-blue violence is causing unease between the U.S. and the people it eventually plans to hand the power over to. This year alone, 45 international service members have been killed as a result of these insider attacks, 28 of them American. Something that is deeply concerning to the administration, but doesn't merit a mention at last night's DNC speech. Nonetheless, White House Press Secretary Jay Carney spoke about the incidents last month.
It's important to remember that, well, first of all, that our relationship with our Afghan partners is strong, and that every day our forces fight alongside Afghan forces. There are now about 350,000 Afghan forces, and we partner with those Afghan forces on 90% of operations. And while whenever there is a so-called green-on-blue incident, it is concerning, and the fact that there have been the number of incidents that you mentioned is deeply concerning.
Now, in that press briefing, Carney went on to say that we need to keep these incidents in perspective. So joining me now to put these incidents, as well as the Afghan war, into perspective, Anthony Schaefer. He works on the Task Force in National and Homeland Security with the Center for Advanced Defense Studies, and he joins me now. All right, Anthony, Tony, lots to talk about here. Let's start off with this green-on-blue violence. What's the problem here? Are we not vetting these people closely enough because of our desire to get out by 2014?
You're correct. I'm not sure about the 2014 date, but we are not vetting them properly because 3 years ago, when I first brought this up, and other experts warning them, the closer you get to, the more you're going to see the Taliban become more emboldened. We said you had to do the vetting to protect our troops. They chose not to do that for any number of political reasons, and I think we're now suffering the consequences. Going to one of your comments on the introduction, Megan, one of the reasons they didn't bring this up is because the very root of this problem goes back to President Obama announcing in 2009 in his West Point speech, we're leaving in 2014. So he emboldened the Taliban. This is part of their game plan. He gave them the ability to plan for this, and they're continuing to expand it. We've seen the numbers increase over the last 3 years. This is not by accident. And more importantly, this whole fiction that the Afghans are leading. Look, I talked to people on the ground there, Megan. An Afghan-led operation is basically putting the Afghan army in a Humvee ahead of our U.S. Army guys and then letting them drive around in a circle. That's it. It's a fiction. So I'm very critical by the fact that we're not making progress. This has become a political issue the White House doesn't want to talk about. And frankly, the bottom line for me and others who have been in uniform, who have been there, we're putting our kids, our soldiers in jeopardy for no good reason, with onerous rules of engagement, with no real path forward other than to suffer it out for the next 18 months.
And Tony, let's talk really quickly about the difference between a war and nation building. We are nation building right now. So how can you put an exit date on nation building when you don't know how long it's going to take to build the nation?
You can't. And when they announced this policy, I also said you got to go big or go home on another competing network. And the bottom line is this: of that assessment I made then 3 years ago, to go big and actually be successful in the nation building we're talking about, you would have to put 500,000 troops on the ground for 10 years. And we knew that wasn't in the cards, so therefore we started saying it's not going to work. We were unfortunately correct in our prediction, and now we're heading for the door. So we've got to figure out, and I've talked to several senior generals about this, the numbers are irrelevant. It's the mission. And the fact is the mission we've been given, this nation building thing, is not working based on the resources allotted to it. And a friend of mine, retired Congressman, former Admiral Joe Sustak, told me that he was lied to about this. They briefed him when this first happened in 2009, saying, oh, no, this is going to be us focusing on the border. And they did the bait and switch on him. He admits now that they switched the mission from protecting the border to nation building, to enhancing that. And frankly, and he's a Democrat. He's upset about this.
And just to go back to this green-on-blue attack thing that we're facing right now, the insider attacks that we're facing right now, I mean, are we kind of switching from the mindset of the U.S. versus the Taliban to the U.S. versus Afghanistan?
Well, this is a great question, and let me try to parse it for your audience. The Karzai government has been described by Ambassador Ryan Crocker and other officials as another insurgency. I've spoken to a number of folks, to include some Afghans, who feel the Karzai government itself is helping to create the conditions for the uprising because of the corruption. The corruption is now so rampant that there's the Afghan people themselves. So this is really not about us helping the Afghan people. I wish it was so two-dimensional. This is where we've sided with a corrupt government, and the Afghan people who really, I think, like you, like me, want to be free, see that they're caught between two very bad choices, two Hobson's choices. And unfortunately for us, many of them are choosing the Taliban because we've already announced we're leaving, and there's fear that the Karzai government will fall the moment we leave.
And Tony, the Ministry of Defense, the Afghan Ministry of Defense, that is actually handing out booklets to try to its forces to try to explain the Western mindset. It covers everything from talking to women to praying to taking pictures of the country. But I mean, Tony, we're in their country. Shouldn't it be the other way around?
Well, we tried that, and I don't mean to put a bad face on the idea of trying to be culturally sensitive. It's just I think we've gone too far. We were there in 2001, 2002, 2003 to basically right a wrong. We had the right of vendetta. And I don't mean to diminish the importance of cultural understanding, but we were there because we were attacked. The Afghan people supported us in this. Remember that the actual conflict in 2001, 2002, 42 days. The Northern Alliance and others helped us do this. Now we tried to insinuate upon them, these people who are essentially not ungoverned, they're self-governed, to be loyal to a central government. They have no tradition of that. So therefore, we have helped create the very circumstance we're now trying to affix.
And I want to kind of switch the conversation just a little bit to Yemen. President Obama has in many ways become the drone president. Yet he said in in an interview earlier this week that he wants to use drones responsibly. He didn't actually address this in the DNC at all, but he did say that he wants to use drones responsibly. And then we look at what's happening in Yemen. 29 people alone died this past week, and they were all civilians. So are we using drones responsibly or not?
I've studied this. I've had high-level contacts with certain leaders of certain embassies recently on this very issue. As a matter of fact, just yesterday. And the problem is this: anytime we use these inappropriately, let's say we kill innocents, we've created the next generation of terrorists. And this is something the Obama administration has just ignored completely. I and other experts have tried to advise them to say, using drones are not bad. It's just if you overuse them and create this perception of progress, you're creating the next generation of terrorists.
Well, and Tony, piggybacking off of what you just said, I mean, these attacks that we're seeing in Yemen, are we actually fostering the Taliban members, or are we fighting them?
I think we're fostering them because much of what we need to do is boots on the ground. You need to be very precise. My book, Operation Dark Heart, talks about precision operations. And let me tell you, drones were a limited aspect of that. What we're doing right now is actually creating more havoc and chaos, which the governing bodies of either Yemen or Pakistan have to deal with. Frankly, I think we're helping destabilize both Yemen and Pakistan by this overuse of drones.
All right, that was Anthony Schaefer with the Task Force in the National Homeland Security for the Center for Advanced Defense Studies. Tony, I really appreciate your opinions.
Great, thank you.